Hello, and welcome to our Vote for Your Future Girl Talk about the importance of being civically and politically engaged. This discussion is part of Girl Up's end-of-year learning series featuring expert panels, youth-driven content, and community action items. Hi, I'm glad all of you have joined us today. This is our Vote for Your Future Girl Talk about the importance of being civically and politically engaged. This discussion is part of Girl Up's end-of-year learning series featuring expert panels, youth-driven content, and community action items that will help young changemakers engage with peers around the world. Topics we have covered in this series are STEM, storytelling, sports, leadership, and mental health. To see our past Girl Talks and register for upcoming ones, please visit girlup.org/events. I'm now going to hand it over to Stephanie Haboush Plunkett, Deputy Director and Chief Curator, and Mary Burley, Chief Educator from the Norman Rockwell Museum. They'll be speaking about the Unity Project, where they've worked with artists to create artwork that promotes civic engagement. Welcome, Stephanie and Mary.
It's so good to be with you, everyone. We are thrilled to be here. Mary's going to give you a little bit of background on the Unity Project, and then we'll take a look at some images, which we hope you'll enjoy. Mary, unmute. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. We're so happy to be here, and we're actually so inspired by the work that you are all doing in the world, and feel particularly privileged that we may have some content that will help and support your efforts. The Norman Rockwell Museum is a museum of illustration art, published imagery that is actually created to have an impact in the world and to shape culture. This year we commissioned, for the first time in our history, 6 top illustrators to create images to get out the vote and have a positive impact on the US election, which is coming up, well, is in progress. We hope you will enjoy these images. They are very girl and women strong, and we hope that you will share them with your networks as part of your ongoing efforts to be civically engaged and to help get out the vote in this really important election, especially for women and girls. So, Stephanie, do you have the images?
I do indeed. Can everybody see those? I hope so. So we are so honored to be with you today. Thank you for inviting us. As Mary said, we had the chance to invite 6 very prominent contemporary illustrators here in the United States to think about how to create a poster that would inspire people to vote. And we got some very powerful responses from, the first is here from Miley Degnant, and I'm going to just tell you a little bit about what each artist said about the work that they did. This piece is called Defend Democracy, and it's very timely, obviously, because of the use of the masks, indicating the pandemic that we're all in. But this was created digitally, and what Miley said is, in this piece, I wanted to illustrate a scene of strong women performing their civic duty of voting in this time of utmost uncertainty. She said, this is not the time to be silent or sit this one out. And she has a wonderful, colorful graphic style to her work. And what she says is she just loves drawing girls, girls of all backgrounds and races and nationalities. And she also loves the use of pattern, which you can see here in this wonderful illustration. The next one is Rudy Gutierrez. Rudy teaches at Pratt Institute, which is an art school in New York, and he has done illustration for many album covers, for US postage stamps, for magazines. And his piece is very expressionistic. It's called Silent Screen, Humanity, Not Politics. It's created in mixed media, which is basically oil paint and colored pencils and ink. And Rudy was very passionate about this subject, and he said, whether we scream sacredly from our hearts, minds, or souls, it is about voting for humanity, not politics. and each of us must do what we can where we stand. In this work by Anita Koons, who actually is Canadian originally and became a US citizen about 15 years ago, she is expressing the feeling that every vote counts. She created this with acrylic paint on board. And she says, there are so many amazing cultures within this country. And the most important thing, and the thing that makes everyone feel included, is to vote. Tim O'Brien is probably the top illustrator for Time magazine, and he's also the president of the Society of Illustrators in New York. And he used an image that goes back to World War II of a figure called Rosie the Riveter. Rosie the Riveter really symbolized the many women who were going into the workforce, into the factories during World War II, at a time when many men were away at war. And here he uses Rosie as an inspiration for a more contemporary icon. And what Tim said was African-American women had a powerful role in the primary season and are likely to make a difference in national elections this year. And he really felt that Rosie was a very appropriate and strong symbol to get this message across. Whitney Sherman is the head of the illustration department master's program at the Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore, Maryland. And what she said about this piece called Vote, Defend Democracy, which is created digitally, is when thinking about voting today, I'm mindful of the need to be vigilant and of the energetic beauty that comes from everyone doing their part to be good citizens. The vote means to participate in the experiment of democracy, an experiment that doesn't continue on its own. It needs each and every one of us. And you can see, if you look into the letter T and the letter O, that she was inspired by recent marches that were reflecting upon the women's movement and Black Lives Matter. And finally, Yuko Shimizu, who is a Japanese illustrator living in New York and teaching at the School of Visual Arts, she really brought together her own cultural heritage in the amazing art of Japan, as well as comic art and the Statue of Liberty, which is an extraordinary icon here in the United States. And she says, each individual voter is a superhero. This is the beauty of democracy, and we have to keep this intact. I wanted to create a poster that is unapologetically American, powerful, and hopeful. And we'll show a little video that shares just a little bit of Yuko drawing and creating her piece. Oh, sorry. That didn't work. Let's see. I apologize. Let's see if I can get that going again. There it is. So it was really a pleasure to share those images with you. I wonder how you feel about them and which one you like the best. And Mary has a few closing remarks.
Just thank you so much for looking online at this project at vote.nrm.org. You'll see on the left is the web address. And if you go to the share page, there's a toolkit for very easy sharing of any of these images on Instagram, on Twitter, and on Facebook. And we really encourage you to use them as however is helpful for you. And we would love, and if you can use the hashtag Unity Project and tag the Norman Rockwell Museum, we will be able to see your efforts and would so appreciate that. So thank you for all of your work. Keep it up, and hopefully this will be a joyful and helpful resource for you.
And someday when we can all travel again, we hope we'll see you here in Western Massachusetts at the Norman Rockwell Museum. Thank you all so much.
And I think we're going on to the panelists now.
Wasn't that amazing? My apologies for missing the mute button, but wasn't that amazing? It's so nice to see the way that art really drives political activism. My name is Priestley Johnson. I am the Deputy Director of Partnerships here at When We All Vote. And When We All Vote is on a mission to increase voter participation in each and every election. We know that in 2016, so many people eligible people, almost half of the population in America did not cast their ballots. And so we did not have a fully representative democracy. Out of that birthed When We All Vote. And at When We All Vote, in my role, I am the partnerships lead. And with partnerships, I mobilize different organizations to take actions, make sure that their employees, their staff, their community, and their networks get out and vote and register to vote. We all know the phrase, voting is your civic duty. This is a pretty common sentiment, especially as each November in the United States is election day. And this year it is November 3rd, and it approaches in 11 days in the United States. But what does it really mean? We should take the responsibility seriously and consider how these issues impact our future. I would like to think that no matter what your age is, your gender, your background, your socioeconomic status, that your voice is what matters, and your voice deserves to be heard. I'm so excited to be moderating the Girl Talk discussion, Vote for Your Future, and I'm very honored to have along with me some dynamic and powerful young women. And I'd like to welcome our panelists to briefly introduce themselves, starting with Valeria. Valeria is the founder and CEO of La Neta Mexico, a platform that provides information and resources on youth lobbying and civic participation in Mexico. De Jóvenes para Jóvenes. She founded and presided over Girl Up Monterrey, co-led the first Girl Up Mexican Coalition, and formed part of the Teen Advisory Program. In her free time, Valeria hosts her podcast, Activimos y Quitimos, and organizes the campaign Tu Voz Tu Voto, or catches up with her friends over Zoom. Valeria.
Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to be here, and I can't wait to share with you all not only my experience and importance of voting, but why you can make the difference no matter what your age is.
I love it. So our next panelist that we have is Melissa. Melissa is a young activist with a passion for social justice and gender equality. She founded the first Girl Up Club in a Brazilian public institution and then became a Girl Up teen advisor. Empowered by Girl Up, she has met with her lawmakers to bring awareness around sexual harassment in schools. She has also organized a 2-week virtual coding camp, Girl Lab, for girls in Latin America. Melissa.
Thank you so much for having me here, and I hope to bring a little bit of the Brazilian perspective on the elections and all of it.
I love it. Thank you, Melissa. Our last and definitely not the least panelist that we have with us today is Aisha. Aisha is a high school senior from Rochester, New York. She has been involved with Girl Up since her freshman year, and after starting her school's Girl Up Club, and since starting her school's Girl Up Club, she has worked with Upstate New York Coalition and represented Girl Up at the 2019 UN ECOS ECOSOC Youth Forum. In her free time, she plays the flute and loves making homemade pasta. With that, Aisha.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today and to talk to you all about how important it is to stay civically engaged in all the great things you can do, even if you're under 18.
I love it. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. I am so interested in learning more about each one of you and how you actually became politically and civically active. What really stirred the pot for you to say, you know what, I'm going to jump into the game, and which issues especially were the ones that sparked in your mind that made you want to say, you know what, we need to create change. So whoever wants to jump in, go right ahead.
I think I can go first. So for me, it was the income inequality here in Brazil because I like to think of my city, Rio de Janeiro, as a northern apartheid. We have this major contrast between the most poor and the most rich. And seeing all of that, I just felt inside of me, I have to do something to change this. I can see many the future generations going through so much pain and suffering. And the way I found to be civically engaged was through volunteer work. So starting teaching English to kids and Portuguese to refugees. And since then, I just didn't stop.
For me, I mean, I think it goes back to when I began working with Girl Up. But most recently, I mean, and the reason why I started working with Girl Up is precisely because I saw that there were many girls who saw themselves as leaders, but yet they did not receive resources or tools or just like mentorship so they could achieve all of their goals. But most recently, I believe that it is realizing that, I mean, young people, we are a big part of the population worldwide, and yet we live in a world that is not designed for us or by us. So I think that definitely it's a reason why we need to start changing the conversation and changing the way that the table is made. Like, we need to be part of that decision making because we are also part of this world and part of this environment. So once we understand that, I think your mindset about civic engagement and the importance of your vote completely changes.
Yeah, I think my experience was very similar to Valeria's. Like she said, she met so many girls who had the potential to become leaders. And for me, it was that they had the potential to become leaders, but they weren't aware of that because they didn't see that representation in government or STEM or, sports or all these fields. And no one told them that they're equally capable to do all of these amazing things and to, pursue careers in male dominated fields. And that's why I think it's so important to vote and to make sure that we have that representation so that all the girls growing up can see that, their gender shouldn't affect what career they can follow.
I love it. And I love what Valeria said about changing the way the table is made. In America, we have an expression that we need to bring more seats to the table, but sometimes the table is a thing that needs to get changed. One thing that really sparked me politically, because I'm not too old, but I'm not too young, is that representation specifically made me want to jump into the game. Once I saw in America, we had the 2008 election of Barack Obama, and it made me see someone that looked like me. And I said, I want this more. Like, it said, oh man, there may be a place for me in this political sphere, or in making sure that my voice, as well as other people that look like me, have their voices heard. And it really pushed me to say, you know what? I guess it's time to jump into the game, like each one of you. So I want to also talk a little bit more about what it's like to really fight for change. And I'm sure that you face many obstacles, and those obstacles really make you who you are, right? And so I want you, each of you, to talk about maybe one obstacle that you feel like shaped kind of your fight, and how you were able to overcome it.
I mean, I think there are many things that were obstacles in my activism, but I feel like definitely believing that I could do it by myself was a big thing, especially in for girls by girls movement like Girl Up, because we're so used to, having a teacher supervise us or like an adult supervising us. And when you're doing a thing for yourself and for people your age and you're the person in charge, it feels kind of weird because like there's no one that you can, I mean, there's people that are going to mentor you, but like no one is going to tell you like this is good, this is wrong, this is bad, like unless you're really doing something that you shouldn't be doing. So I feel like believing that I could lead a group of people, believing in myself, believing that I could make everything happen without necessarily being supervised by someone older than me, I feel like what that was definitely a game changer, because after I realized that I could do it for myself, I realized like I can basically do anything. Like now that I know that I did something at my age, like I know that I can basically do anything.
Yeah, believing in yourself. Aisha?
Yeah, I think my experience was super similar. Like you said, when I was 15 at the time that I went to speak at the United Nations and to represent Girl Up there. And I think the biggest obstacle for me there is that with having no like adult supervision, I second guessed everything I did or said there because I was like, no one told me to say this, so like how do I know what to do and stuff like that. And everyone else was second guessing me, so I started second guessing myself. And that was just something I had to push through, and it took a lot of time to learn how to stop doing that and to just trust myself and trust that I know what I'm doing. But once I did, like you said, I realized that like I can do anything. Like I know what I'm doing, and if I just trust myself and realize my potential and my own worth, like I don't need to be constantly doubting myself.
I definitely feel both of you as well. I feel like being young is such a challenge because some people are going to ignore you, others are going to think that you're cute, but not take you so seriously. And I definitely feel like Grow Up gave me this big space where I just understood that yes, I'm young, but I'm also a part of the change that we are facing in our current society, and that we can always do more.
You know what's something interesting? I was answering these questions myself last night, and I was like, my answer is very, very similar to each of yours because I am young in my field, and I'm a deputy director, and I am telling people what to do at twice my age. And I'm like, I don't know, most of the time I'm winging it myself too. So, and just like your inspiration of saying you need to believe in yourself, you need to trust yourself, like if you say it confidently, maybe they'll listen. So I just want to say like learning that at such a young age is really, really dope, and definitely keep it going, because that internal voice that you are grooming is the thing that's going to be able to really it's going to be the thing that's going to be able to steer you in the right direction, and you'll always end up in the right place if you listen to that voice. So let's switch the conversation and talk a little bit more about voting, and what it really means as young people to be voting right now. And so what I want to ask, each of you are from different places. Do you guys hear people say like, I'm not going to vote, or have sentiments that they're against voting? And what do you tell people like that? And how can we create a change? What do we tell people that are not very interested in voting?
I think where I'm from, so I'm in New York right now, which is always a blue state. Like, people usually think their vote doesn't really matter here because we pretty much sway one way in every big election. And the biggest thing that I say back to that is that that may be true for like a presidential election or like, bigger pictures. But here in America, I think it's so important to think about local elections and, your state legislators, state senates, stuff like that. People don't think about like local policymakers or local legislators. They're mostly just thinking about the president. And, while the president's election obviously very important, you have to think about all the way down the line because everyone in government has specific goals that they're trying to achieve. And if you look into like your local legislators, they make just as important policies as people in the White House. So I think it's important to think about all the change you can make, not only on like a federal level, but for just like your everyday life.
No, that's really great. Melissa?
Yes, Aisha, I feel you because that is so common here in Brazil too. Here, the presidential elections are in the same, basically in the same month as regional elections, and everyone's so focused on electing a president. But we also forget that our region is also important, and that when we have a problem, we call our local lawmakers. So something I always try to say, like here in Brazil, the vote is mandatory, but there are so many people that choose not to vote and pay a fee. And the truth is, when we don't uplift our voices, others will in our place. So when we don't vote and we don't speak out, someone else is making the choice for you. So this is just some awareness that I try to bring. Like, you can complain about the president and who got elected if you're also not participating on it. You got to make the change.
Here in Mexico, I see two big trends. So the first one is that here in Mexico, you can vote when you're 18, right? So when I was in high school, I was 17 and like a bunch of my friends were 18 and many of them decided not to vote. And I was so, I don't know, like I had this weird feeling inside myself because I was like, if only I was 18, like if only I was 18, I would have been able to do it and I would have the opportunity to vote. Like for so many people, it's like they don't care about it, but for so many others, it's just like I would like to have that opportunity, right? And I see two major trends. The first one is people who don't care because they think it doesn't matter, like it has really no impact on the final decision. And the second thing that I see, the second trend that I see specifically in young people is people who vote for whatever their parents are voting for, which I feel like, okay, yes, that happens. And it's okay that we get inspired by who our people, like who people near us vote for. But at the same time, we need to realize that your vote is your vote. Like you are the person who decides who is going to be up there. Like, like you don't have to vote for what people around you are telling you to vote. And maybe you have not questioned yourself how maybe that specific candidate or that specific party that your family or your friends are voting for, it's completely different to your own point of views. So I think those are two major things that we need to take into consideration. Okay, first thing, your vote actually has an impact. And the second thing is that it's okay to vote different. Like you don't have to vote the same way that other people do around you.
I love it. I love it. I do this work almost every day, just messaging to young people and to people across the nation. And what I say and what I feel like resonates is like telling them that voting is not marriage. It's not someone you have to marry and you're thinking about committing to them for an entire lifetime. It's more so about, I think of it more so as you need to take a bus and you need to take a bus to the closest destination that's going to drop you off at the closest place to your destination. Maybe you need to walk a few more blocks. Maybe you need to take 2 buses and it's going to be twice as long as you thought it was going to be. But what we're going to do is we're going to hop on somebody's bus so that at least we're going to get closer to where we're trying to get. And I think that's something that people can understand. It's not necessarily a lifetime commitment. And after those 2, 3, 4 years, that person has to come back to you and say what they did with those years. And so I really, really, really want to promote that have your voice heard. I love what Aisha said about getting from the top to the bottom of the ballot, because the people at the bottom of the ballot have more say over your direct life than what you would consider a presidential ticket to be. So really, really consider that as well. So I want you guys to talk to me about your grassroots movement and campaigns that really inspired you to keep doing the work that you're doing. Like, for example, Nelson Mandela was inspired by Gandhi or MLK. What keeps you all inspired to continue the work that you're doing? Melissa?
Okay, so here I started my Girl Up Club, especially because I wanted to have an impact on mental health and all of that. And to this day, my biggest inspiration is Nisa da Silveira. She's basically a Brazilian that fought against the manicomio that we have here, and she revolutionated the psychiatry we have in our country. So to this day, I still think of her and all her ideals. I work for a social justice, a social an equal society where your background, your mental health, none of those things matter or are put against you. And she still is my biggest inspiration in the my club. And I think every day I just try to think, oh my God, what would she do in my place? So
For me, I feel like this is gonna sound super cheesy, but for me, it's definitely the girl up community. Like seeing friends and like people I don't know of. Like it's weird because there are many people in girl up that I don't know personally, but like I have seen online through photos or through events like this one, and I just feel like they're already my sisters or like I already know them in a weird way. And definitely seeing people that are passionate in the same way that I am about civic engagement and social impact and all of that stuff, it just makes me feel like I'm not alone. And I feel like that is a very powerful feeling because although we might be hundreds of kilometers away from each other, it feels like we are all in the same page and we're all in the same movement. And it just feels good to know that there's someone in Brazil or New York that is also fighting the fight. You know, it's just very powerful.
Yeah, over here where I'm from, we have a group that organizes, or multiple groups that organize protests very often in my city. Because we have our like our town legislator and stuff like that very close together, and the district attorney's office. So the first protest I went to was in eighth grade. It was for climate action, and that's really when I first got involved because I went to the protest and there was just so many people grouped up outside. Like our town legislators' offices and stuff like that, and I almost felt like you said, like I almost felt like I knew them just because we were all there fighting for the same thing and I knew we all had that same motivation. So I feel like in some way I like know them and I can relate to them. And just having such a huge crowd like standing there with you is just such a powerful feeling. And obviously you can't do that now because of corona, but hopefully soon and we can still do things online and you always know that you have a group behind you or just like with you that are willing to support the same thing that you're like working for.
Yeah, like when you find your people that are with you in the fight, and you find your community and you really appreciate them. Really, really love on the people that are around you that will come out with you in those protests, that will, message you back on those message boards, that will, drive you to the to the nearest, meetup point. These things are what drives and really pushes and moves the needle, and it's because of the little tiny actions that each one of you are doing. Again, I want to mention, if anyone has any questions for our panelists, please make sure you use the Q&A box. We would love to answer some of your questions, and we'll be taking questions in just a few more moments. So please jump into the Q&A box. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know how we can answer your questions, and we're really looking forward to that section. So as we have a ton of people on today's webinar, I want to really talk to each of you about what your advice would be for other people that are looking to become more civically engaged, looking to find their own community, their own people, their own tribe, I guess. What does that look like, and how would you encourage them to get more civically engaged, especially right now as many elections are happening around the world?
I think the biggest thing that I can say is just you have to throw yourself in head first and just get yourself out there, which for me being so young, it was such a scary thing because I was like, I don't want to mess up or do something wrong or, get in like just not do it right essentially. But you have to take that risk and you know what you're fighting for and you know what you believe in. So you have to find people who will support you, who believe in the same things. For me, I joined a lot of like school clubs, and for clubs that didn't necessarily have what I was fighting for, I started them, like Girl Up, which is always an option. It's a great option for you guys to start your own community if you can't find one where you are. I would really encourage you guys to do that because that was one of the best decisions I ever made. I didn't really find my people, and I was like, oh, I can't really find this already built community to like help me get on board with this. And I was like, all right, I'll start it then. So you really just have to throw yourself in and go head first. There's no easing yourself into stuff like this.
I totally agree with Aisha, but I think there's also such a major point that I see some people neglect sometimes, that is getting to know your community. I feel like you should explore and establish also get to know your community. So just try to understand what is happening, what are the issues, what are the issues' roots. And I feel like that way you can connect more deeply and create more relationships that way. And definitely get involved with clubs and all of that. And if possible, get involved with Girl Up because you won't regret it ever.
100% agreed. There are three things that I would have known like 3 years ago when I began with Girl Up. The first one is you're not alone. And I feel like that is the most important thing. Like what Ayesha was saying, that is so important. Like, yes, maybe in your local community, you could feel like you're the only person who cares about this. But like around the world, there are millions of people that are passionate about these topics. So like you're not alone. That I feel like that is the first thing that you need to remember. The second one is that the taking the first step is definitely the most difficult. Like Melissa, Ayesha, and I, like we all started our Girl Up clubs, and I'm talking for you, but like at least I began my Girl Up club by myself, like knowing that most people were not gonna believe that it was possible or that it wasn't necessary in my community. But like step by step, I started gathering more friends and more people that were also getting passionate about this, and we became like a huge club here in Mexico. So definitely it's just realizing that the first step is the most difficult, but you're gonna get past it. So that's great. And the last one is that we need to realize we're like, at least I am 19 years old. And sometimes I feel like I have this big responsibility on my shoulders that I need to like end this big systemic change that has been like on earth for like 100 years. And it's like, no, girl, like it's okay. You're 19, like you have a life in front of you. This problem has been here like for a very long time. So it's just about recognizing that you are gonna make a difference, but from one day to another, you're not gonna change like the entire systemic change that is needed. And that's okay, that it's natural, and that is just part of the job. So it's all about realizing that it's a step-by-step journey. It's about knowing who to communicate with and believing in yourself.
I love it. I'm super inspired myself, and I totally agree. Every day I'm like, so how can we break down systems and rebuild, entire societies? I'm there with you, and I'm with you in this fight. And it's for the other people that are want to be in this fight with us, but they may not be 18 years old or old enough to vote this upcoming year. What are your recommendations to them to say, like, how can they start taking action if they're not old enough yet to either vote or if they feel like they're not old enough yet to be civically engaged?
So for me, I want to say I'm 17, so I totally feel when you want to vote in this election, I'm missing it by just a couple months before I turn 18. So frustrating for me. But there's a lot of things you can do to stay civically engaged, and this will vary by like country to country, so it kind of depends where you are. But here in the United States, what I've been doing is getting involved with local legislator campaigns. So right now I am working as an intern on a state Senate campaign. So I've been making phone calls and, trying to sway voters, stuff like that. I'll be running a poll station next week sometime. Um, but yeah, I would say try to get involved with campaigns in your area. A lot of times it's harder to get involved with like big federal campaigns, but there's always, like I said, there's always local politics. And those are usually pretty easy to get involved with, and they can make such a huge effort, if you do it right. So I would really encourage you guys to try and get involved locally. Usually you can make calls for your senators, or a lot of times they have in-person gatherings, which again, depending on where you are, might not be happening right now. But those are super important. You can usually do that if you're under voting age.
That's actually interesting. I actually got my start doing calls for a senator when I was younger. So definitely highly recommend it. You just start getting a bug and it just keeps growing from there. Ladies?
I think that's amazing. And I'm lucky here because I can vote if I'm 16 or older. So yay. But something that I feel like it's also a major part of being civically engaged is educating yourself and others. So raising awareness on issues that are not typically spoken about or not spoken enough. Because you cannot change something if it's not in the radar, Let me see. Yeah, I think that's basically it. Like speak out, try to get in, like pressure your politicians. They are working for you. Don't ever forget that and put yourself in the lead.
I
Yes,
love what you said. You can't change anything unless it's on someone's radar. If they are totally oblivious of what's a concern or an issue to you, and they just are they can't change it, and they might be the ones empowered to be able to do it. So definitely shout out to you, Melissa. Valeria?
Definitely. I just want to remind everyone that, okay, yes, maybe you have to be 18 in order to vote, but there is no minimum age to be civically engaged. Like there is not a limit of age or like a minimum amount of years that you need to have in order to get involved with politics and civic engagement. And something that I realized like just this year, Girl Up was the first encounter that I had with lobbying. And this was back in the Girl Up Leadership Summit in Washington, D.C. So when I came back to Mexico, I got here and I was like, yes, I want to lobby, I want to do this and that. And I realized that like most people, like most adults and people my age didn't even know what lobbying was. And I was like, how, like what? Like, and I don't blame them because I also didn't know what lobbying was before Girl Up. So I think that really showed me that it doesn't matter how old you are, like if you're informed and you educate other people, like if you educate yourself to educate other people, and if you motivate other people to make a change and to be engaged, that is going to be enough. Because people who were underage back then were the ones who inspired me to learn about lobbying. And now that I'm more informed on how to lobby here in Mexico, I am inspiring other people. And I hope to continue inspiring other people to get engaged and contact the representatives, no matter what their age is. And yeah, I feel like those are the two main things. One, get informed, educate yourself. And the second one is motivate others to do the same thing.
I love it. So I am going to hit everyone with a few facts because I think it's really important to talk about young people. So in 2018, we saw the largest turnout of young people in decades for a midterm election in the US. So many people use their voice in a way that wasn't never, ever done before in America. But unfortunately, that number still was 2/3 of young people that did not cast their vote. That means the highest amount of participation for young people or 18 to 24-year-olds was only 1/3, 33% of young people in America. And I imagine it is definitely similar across other boards. So I want to really stress to young people that you have so much of a gap to an opportunity to reach. And there's also 15 million young people that are going to be turning 18 since the last general election and will be newly eligible to vote this year, this upcoming election on November 3rd. If you voted for the first time at 18, you're also going to be more likely to become a lifelong voter, and your voice will be heard, and you're going to be like, oh, I voted before. Oh, let me just vote again. Oh, let's just vote again. So again, if you can bring your little brother, your little sister, your cousin with you to the polls, let's create some lifelong voters. Get involved, get your family and friends involved, and do whatever you can to make sure that the people around you, the people that look like you, the people with the same backgrounds as you, are educated about the issues. You're going to be the best influencers for your friends, your families, and everyone to get registered and ready to vote. So wherever you are across our land, let's make sure that if you are eligible, make sure you get registered to vote. And if you're not eligible yet, jump in the game, get everyone on board, and make your impact. So with that, I'm going to do a round of 30 seconds. What is your call to action for our young people that may be watching this? What is your call to action for them? 30-second pitch, and then we're going to take a few questions.
I would say make it a reason to party. You know, like this is gonna sound super weird, but like what you were saying, Priestley, like when you go out and vote, I feel like so many people think that it's just like something that is like boring in a sense. And the way that I see it is like, okay, go to vote, and here in Mexico, go for some tacos after that, or like go for some pizza, or go and do something that excites you and that you want to do with your family and your friends after doing that civic engagement part. You know, so like always find a way to make it attractive, always find a way to make it more interesting for the people around you, and that is going to definitely make the difference.
Valeria, just to pause you on that, that is actually a scientific, proven thing that if you make voting celebratory, it actually increases voting by up to 4%. So when you see all the numbers on the board after elections and they're like they won by 53%, like percentage that ways, that could really shift an election, and it is a huge impact. So look at you already in strategy.
I would say no one knows what you believe and who you are better than you. And don't let anyone tell you differently just because, you're younger or you're too young to vote. So, go out there and get yourself out there and just take that first step to get involved. Because once you take that first step, everything after that will just become so much easier. And just keep persisting. Just like we all said, you're going to face some obstacles, but just remember that everything is going to pass if you just keep going and don't stop, don't look back.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of you. And I think my pitch would be your actions have impact. So what you think that would be a meaningless conversation with maybe your mother or your father about politics can actually create an impact in the way they see politics, in the way they vote, in the way they see the candidates are to be elected. So never be afraid to speak your mind and to share your beliefs, because I think that's what unites us and makes us stronger.
Let's get stronger. So I'm seeing that we have different questions. And their first question from the audience is, if you could run for any elected position, what would it be and why? And what's the most fruitful civic action that you have taken to create change? Or let's do the first question first. If you could run for any elected position, what would it be and why?
I will run for Senate because here in Brazil, Senate is kind of underestimated, but they are the one that creates so many changes, and at the same time, they are not so much in the media. So I think it would be just easier to run for office as a senator, and at the same time, that would be creating impact for a lifetime.
I think exactly the same way. I was thinking the same thing, like definitely run for Senate first, just so I can get like, I understand the environment, understand how everything works. And after that, just like run your own campaign and run for president and make the change from the top.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I was actually gonna say I would run for to be a congresswoman, I think, or Senate. I feel like they make the most impact in terms of legislation. And like you said, it'd be an easier campaign than running for president. And I think I would have more impact that way.
Let's build it up. And then I see some future presidents here. So I love it myself. I've always imagined myself to be more of a chief of staff person than a president. I like to manage people and make sure that we're all doing a good job. My own preference. All right. So our next question is, what has been the most fruitful civic action that you have taken to create change? What is your aha moment? Oh, I'm doing this and it worked, and whatever I did actually paid off. I have a few moments myself where I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. It actually worked, my vision. So any of you guys want to jump in?
I think I can jump in first. I had two major moments. The first one was leading a campaign about sexual harassment in schools. And it was just amazing because calling to your lawmakers and just talking about this issue and listening and hear and seeing that they actually listen to you and they're actually interested in solving this issue was amazing and the impact that it has on multiple girls. The second would definitely be we basically made a policy recommendation against domestic violence because it increased in pandemic. And we also have so many signatures, and we even have signatures from actors. And it was just amazing seeing all of this impact and seeing that, oh my God, my job is actually getting things done.
Yes, for me, I remember like continuing my story of that one time that I went to the Girl of Leadership Summit and I learned what lobbying was. So I came back to Mexico and I went to my local Congress and I met with a representative and I was like, hey, like I just like I don't really know how lobbying works in Mexico, so like I just want to learn. I just want to like I don't know, like learn something today. And they were like, there were two representatives, and both of them were just so excited. They were like, "You're the first person your age that comes to lobby. Like, no one else had come this year to our office to lobby anything that is your age." And I was like, "Okay." And they were like, "Why don't we do like an event? Why don't we do something big that makes people want to come to Congress and learn what Congress is?" So we eventually, my Girl Up Club and I, we created this event, which was called Parlamento Rosa, which was an event where girls from our community were able to be a congresswoman for a day. And they were able to participate in Congress and do their own initiatives and just like a bunch of incredible stuff that I was like, wow, like what a difference it makes to reach out and just like even make a phone call and be like, hey, like I want to learn today. Like, what can you teach me? Or what can I do to make a difference? And yeah, I was very amazed from the turnout from that event.
I think mine would be when I was working on the Upstate New York Coalition, we initiated this program to have like monthly speakers to come to talk to members in the coalition. And one month we had a couple of women in politics to come and talk about, basically what we're doing here, like their obstacles, their campaigns, what they've done. And at the end of that specific session, there were so many young girls on there that were asking questions about like, hey, like I'm applying to college. What major should I apply to if I want to, run for Congress like you did or stuff like that? And I could just tell that all of these younger girls were getting so inspired by, the female politicians that we brought in. And they finally saw that like, it's not necessarily this huge thing they have to tackle. Like it's completely realistic for anyone to run for, a governmental position. And I think that was when I saw like the first impact directly from what we were doing.
I love it. So our last question for today is politics can be polarizing. I imagine in your own in your respective countries, you guys may see it becoming even more polarizing. How do you have conversations with people that are from different parties or different sides of the aisle or different perspectives without getting into a heated or out of control type of dialogue? How can you practice listening without being defensive and have an open mind? This is a really, really good question. It's totally, I have some tips and tools as well. So I want to hear your perspectives first.
Polarization is just a way to remind yourself or our different that we should embrace our differences. So something I just try to keep at the back of my mind is that at the end, most of the times we are seeking the same thing: quality education, equal rights, and stuff like that. So just keeping that in mind and just try to move around that. Like, yeah, okay, I see where you're coming from, but at the same time, this issue cannot be solved like this way, by going through this path. Or maybe this issue is just a little bit more complicated than it seems. And I feel like this diplomacy in debates and conversations definitely just advance our actions.
I think what I would say is at my school, I'm like the debate kid. I'm on like the debate team. So my instant reaction to anyone, saying something I don't believe in is I have, three contentions to back up why I'm right. But I think the way that I avoid doing that is almost like when I know I'm gonna have a sort of conversation like that, I try to make my mind like a completely blank slate and just completely forget anything I know about the subject and just listen to what they're saying, which takes a lot of practice to just like kind of get rid of everything you're thinking going into a conversation. But I feel like that's the best way to really understand where they're coming from. And sometimes it still doesn't work. Sometimes I'll listen to them and I'll be like, that makes zero sense to me. But when things like that happen, that's actually a good thing because it shows that like people can have different opinions and still want the same thing and still be striving towards the same end goals. Like Melissa said, from in most cases, people are striving towards the same goals of equality or education or stuff like that. So you have to keep that in your mind.
Yes, I think it's all about having empathy, like understanding why people are voting the way they are voting or why they think the way they think. And I would just use the phrase like whenever you're having this very meaningful or very important conversation with someone that thinks differently than you do, is saying, I understand, but how is your vote going to reflect this point of view? Because I think that is extremely important. Here in Mexico, at least, we have many political parties, and sometimes people just decide to vote for the party and not for the representative itself. And I think that shows that sometimes we're not really informed of what are the initiatives or proposals that the representatives are making. I mean, yes, we have this bigger picture image of the party, but like specifically, what does the representative of that party that you're going to vote for represent, and how is that going to have an impact in your community? And once you do all the research and all of that education and you have your arguments on why you're voting for that person, I feel like that is a moment where you're like, okay, it's okay to think different and vote different, but like now that I know why, I feel like we have reached a common ground of, okay, like now we know why we think different, and now we know that we're all informed and we're going to take the best decision for ourselves.
I love that. Stay informed and really be patient with people. I think one thing in America, especially that we've been seeing, is definitely this kind of us against them sort of conversation and people just saying, I can't, and not engaging in conversation. There's not a lot of dialogue that's happening. But one thing that I've seen to be really effective is not to try to prove your point, but more so to ask questions. Ask them, wait, so why do you want to vote in that manner? Or what have you heard about X, Y, and Z, how it has influenced people? Oh, well, this is what I know about it. Did you know that? Like sometimes asking questions and being calm is honestly the best way to get people to think a little bit more critically about how they're using their voice and their power. So I think we've come to the end of our session. I am personally incredibly impressed, very honored to be on this call with each one of you, and very, very grateful to have each one of our viewers here tuning in. Some core messages that I've gotten from this conversation is that you're not a monolith. I've seen each of you talk about different issues that you're passionate about: voting, climate change, domestic violence, making sure more women have their voices heard. We want to make sure that don't be put in anyone's box, and I really appreciate all of you for doing that. You don't have to be a certain age to get involved. All you need to do is care, and don't let people tell you that you can't. That is not going to be the way that we are going to prevent people. We're going to overcome our challenges, and we're going to make sure our voices get even louder. We want everyone to stay open to learning, stay informed, do your research. And also, our last thing is that we want to change the way the table is made. And we want to make sure that this table is made from a foundation that is reflective and representative of all of us. So, for today's for tonight's session, I just want to say thank you for this Girl Talk discussion about vote for your future. Our future is brighter because of each and every one of you. So thank you again. And with that, let's say bye to the people.
Bye. Thanks everyone.